Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Breast cancer charities and Public Health England are reporting a major increase in the number of women contacting them following the revelation by the Health Secretary that a computer error has led to hundreds of thousands of women in England not being invited to their final routine screening. The error, dating back to 2009, has meant that around 450,000 women aged between 68 and 71 could be affected. The think tank, the Institute for Public Policy Research, has questioned why a fall in the number of women getting screened didn't raise any alarms. Here's our correspondent, Catherine Burns.
Social Care Secretary.
Yesterday lunchtime, the Health and Social Care Secretary made the announcement.
I wish to inform the House of a serious failure that has come to light in the National Breast Screening Programme in England.
Have you had a mammogram done before?
450,000 women were not invited to their final mammogram. 309,000 of them are still alive. Some may be perfectly healthy. Others may have breast cancer or be facing up to a terminal diagnosis.
Since we opened this morning at Breast Cancer Care, we had 40 calls in the first 15 minutes, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. People are calling about, are they affected? Because people aren't quite clear whether they're affected or not.
Other women have emailed the BBC about this. One says she's 69 and has waited more than 3 years for a mammogram, even though she's had breast cancer before. Another writes, I'll be 70 next year and have not received a screening call for at least 8 years. There may well be good explanations for these particular women, but they and many others who could have been affected will be looking for answers now.
So a bit more of a stretch.
Women are supposed to be invited for their first mammogram sometime between their 50th birthday and turning 53. Then every 3 years until they're 70. This error, which is being blamed on administrative incompetence, started in 2009 and didn't come to light until earlier this year. Meanwhile, the proportion of women getting screened for breast cancer was going down and is now at a 10-year low. It's fallen from almost 74% to just over 71% in a decade. This could be for a number of reasons, but some are asking why nobody examined the data more closely.
Well, Public Health England should have drilled down into the data to understand what was going on and should have noticed that there were a large number of women missing from the baseline that they were analysing.
Public Health England says the breast cancer screening programme is world class and that they're devastated this has happened.
We proactively invite women, unlike many other countries, but they don't necessarily take up that offer. So the numbers who are coming forward will vary each year. Obviously we screen about we invite 2.5 million to 3 million women every year. So although it does seem a huge number, this is over a 9-year period and spread in that context. It isn't immediately obvious.
Now the focus is on the women who missed invitations to screening. Public Health England says 5,000 have called a helpline so far. Catherine Burns, BBC News.
Well, our health editor Hugh Pym is here with me now. And Hugh, there are questions swirling around now about who knew what and when.
Yes, Rita, a lot of unanswered questions. First of all, if the problems began to emerge after a software upgrade in 2016, that's what we were told yesterday, why did it take all of last year for them to become apparent and for possible solutions to be worked out? And why was Public Health England at national level only aware of it in January this year? But having become aware in January, why did it take till early May for an announcement to be made? Ministers said they were told in March. Was valuable time lost in the last few months? I think all of this will be looked at very carefully by the review that Jeremy Hunt announced yesterday, the independent review by experts. They'll have till October. They'll also be wanting to look at why the IT, if that's being blamed, as it is, was so unfit for purpose in 2016. How far did the problems go back? Public Health England itself was only established after government reforms in 2013. Who should have been accountable? Who should have been in charge of all this? And yes, there will be questions for the government, and Jeremy Hunt, the Health and Social Care Secretary, he's been careful not to point a finger of blame at officials. But I think there are a lot of questions and a lot more debate about what will happen, as well as, of course, focusing on the tragic consequences for some women who missed out on their screening.
OK, Hugh, thank you. And if you want to contact the helpline that's been set up for women affected by this, the number is 0800 169 2692. And you can find more information on the NHS Choices website as well. Now, Donald Trump appears to have confirmed that he personally repaid his lawyer money given to a porn star during the 2016 election campaign after she alleged they'd had an affair. This appears to contradict earlier statements made by Mr. Trump that he knew nothing about the payment. He denies having had an affair with Stormy Daniels. His lawyer, Michael Cohen, paid her $130,000 as part of a non-disclosure agreement. From Washington, here's Chris Buckler.
Thank you very much.
The truth of what happened between the president and the porn star continues to be the source of much dispute. Donald Trump denies ever having a sexual encounter with the adult film actress Stormy Daniels, but there are some very contradictory messages when it comes to legal affairs about that alleged affair. On board Air Force One last month, Donald Trump insisted he knew nothing of the $130,000 payment made by his personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, to Stormy Daniels.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
No, I don't know. He directed all questions to Mr. Cohen, whose office was raided a few weeks ago as part of a criminal investigation into his business dealings. In the meantime, Donald Trump has been building up a new legal team, which includes the former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani. And appearing on Fox News last night, he seemed to contradict his client and suggested the president did know about the cash.
That money was not campaign money. Sorry, I'm giving you a fact now that you don't know. It's not campaign money. No campaign finance violation. So
they funneled it through the law firm.
Funneled through the law firm, and the president repaid it.
The money intended to keep Stormy Daniels quiet about her claims was paid in the days just before the 2016 presidential election. And the intention of this new statement seems to have been to try to dismiss claims that the payment could have broken campaign finance rules. But it's led to new questions, particularly as Rudy Giuliani said it was repaid disguised as legal fees. It's clear that Donald Trump is continuing to struggle with that Stormy issue. A president still looking for some protection from those allegations of the past. Chris Buckler, BBC News, Washington.
We can talk to our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue, who's in Washington for us. And Gary, President Trump, as is his custom, has been tweeting about this morning.
Yeah, Rita, the White House, the president, the press office, Mr. Trump's lawyers are all over the place on this Stephanie Clifford, aka Stormy Daniels story. They're trying to get all their ducks in a row. And this morning, the president, as you say, has been tweeting, trying to point out, trying to be very clear that whatever the status of those payments, they did not come from the campaign. So you can see here that Michael Cohen, the president's lawyer, saying that claiming that they did not come from the campaign or anything related to the campaign. Why is that important? Because that would risk violating campaign contribution laws, campaign finance laws, and that is something we know that the Mueller investigation is looking into. However, the bigger picture here is that the president has for some time said he knew nothing about this whatsoever, and his personal lawyer now, Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, saying actually he did know there was $35,000 a month being repaid to Michael Cohen to cover this whopping $130K paid just before the election to the porn star to keep her quiet.
Gary, thank you. Gary O'Donoghue there. Cambridge Analytica, which came under severe criticism for gathering data from tens of millions of Facebook users, will continue to be investigated by the regulator, even though it's closing down. It denies any wrongdoing and says that media attention has driven away all of its clients. Well, we can talk now to our correspondent Lucinda Adam, who's outside the London offices of the company. And Lucinda, tell us more about the watchdog's investigation.
Well, this morning the watchdog has been adamant that Cambridge Analytica and its bosses and its parent company SCL can't run and hide by filing for bankruptcy. It was only a few weeks ago that the Information Commissioner's Office investigators raided these headquarters in a 7-hour operation where they say they took away evidence which they're now going over. There are fears that the company may try to delete some of the data that it holds, but today the watchdog has said that it will watch the company's administration process very closely, that it will continue with civil and criminal investigations, and that it will pursue any individuals and company directors as appropriate, even where the companies are no longer operating. Well, Alexander Nix, the chief executive of Cambridge Analytica, stepped down last month after he received a grilling by the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee. But if proceedings are brought and can't be brought against a company that no longer exists, they can still be brought against any former staff that were there at the time. And the watchdog will be looking closely at what happens to the assets of these companies as they wind up, in case there are any fines to be paid. Well, the investigators also added they're monitoring any successor companies. That's because many people believe this won't be the end of Cambridge Analytica, that there's such a demand for data and digital marketing that their services could reappear under the guise of another company. While Cambridge Analytica maintain that all their staff acted legally and ethically, but the regulators believe they still have some questions to answer.
Lucinda, thank you. The Basque separatist group ETA has announced that it's disbanding. The group, deemed a terrorist organisation by the European Union, killed more than 800 people between 1968 and 2010. A year later, it announced a permanent ceasefire. Well, our correspondent Tom Burridge is in San Sebastian for us now. And Tom, this is a significant moment.
It is, Rita, but it has been one of Spain's worst-kept secrets. It's been a question of when ETA will disband, not if. I mean, public opinion turned against this group in the late 90s after a series of high-profile assassinations. 7 years ago, it announced a ceasefire. It's been decommissioning weapons in the last few years via international mediators. But this statement confirms that the group is now longer no more, and it claims that the group is ceasing all political activity. But it also says in the statement a very clear political message, and that message seems to be that the ex-members of ETA, those who support the group, are now in support of the very goal that they've always sought, the creation of a separatist Basque state. And they'll do that now via those left-wing Basque nationalist parties, which have a minority of supports here in the Basque Country, but a sizable minority, and they'll do that via democratic, peaceful means, and they have been in recent years. We spoke to one man whose father was assassinated by ETA in 1996, shot at point-blank range, and he said this statement is pure propaganda. That's the way it's seen by the Spanish government, and that's the way it will be seen by many people across Spain. ETA will always be, in their eyes, a terrorist organisation that killed more than 800 people in a brutal campaign of violence.
OK, Tom, thank you. Tom Burridge there. The Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson says he's made clear to the Home Office that Afghan interpreters for British forces who moved to the UK should be allowed to stay. He described them as brave individuals who had every right to be in the country. It comes after more than 150 interpreters wrote a letter to Mr Williams demanding a change to the immigration rules. It's feared that over 100 people have died in powerful dust storms sweeping across parts of North India. Most of the dead were in Uttar Pradesh. A senior official told the BBC they were the most intense storms in decades. Many of the dead were asleep at home when their homes collapsed after being struck by lightning and high winds. Justin Rowlatt reports from Delhi.
The storm swept across North India, bringing devastation. Winds of over 80 miles an hour uprooted electricity pylons. The arcing cables sparked this ferocious fire. Storms are common in India at this time of year, but this one was much bigger than had been forecast. First, the wind whipped up great clouds of choking dust. It was a struggle just to walk down the street. Trees were uprooted, buildings brought down. Then came the rain, torrential rain. As all